Okay, so Poorva, my first question is like, how your filmmaking journey started when you thought about becoming a filmmaker?
I actually don't remember. So I've had a slightly different journey. I didn't see myself as a filmmaker. So even growing up, I didn't really watch too many films. I wasn't in love with films. Um, and I think that sort of continued even as an adult. I did sort of enjoy watching documentaries because I was attracted to the rawness and the realness in 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 a sense. And but again, I mean, it's also not something that I aspire to be. And I think I was running a digital platform and called Interviewing India, and I was trying to monetize it. This was way back in 2016, 17. And somebody said, YouTube channel is the way to go because, instead of doing, I used to do long form interviews. So the suggestion was instead of doing that, just start YouTube. And so I was trying to understand how production works of a YouTube, uh, whatever video. So I put a team together really to understand whether it's something that I can do. And what we shot was supposed to be actually a YouTube interview. Um, but I ended up getting the cinematographer to shoot behind the scenes and how it was a interview with a drag queen. And we shot how the drag queen's getting ready, and I sort of started asking questions. And I got into a zone and I saw that I was able to get, that individual in the zone. And I realized falling in love with what just happened. And I knew that I was able to get people to talk, which I had already figured by then because I used to do interviews, and by then I had like done close to 100 interviews all by myself. But that sort of got me, you know, interested in documentary filmmaking as an art form. And then I think one thing led to another. And then when I started making my first film, when I was working with the editor of my first film, I fell in love with editing. And then so it was very accidental. Nothing was planned. And then slowly, as years passed, I got in love. I mean, I got to know about visual storytelling. I started taking a keen interest in visual storytelling. How without really using words visually, how can I convey? So it was a very gradual process for me. So it's a slightly different journey from what other filmmakers have had here. I essentially think of myself as a communicator. I'm somebody who observes, and then if it sort of starts eating me up from inside, I also want to sort of pass it on to a larger audience. And I choose filmmaking as my medium because I think it's a wonderful medium to use if you're a communicator. So I'm more of a communicator than a filmmaker, and I've just sort of picked up these tricks on the way.
Like, what kinds of interviews you used to do?
So these were very informed. These were almost like chats or conversations I used to have with people on the road, complete strangers or friends of friends. I used to really, I would just walk up to them and I would ask them. I used to carry a list of topics with me, right from food to education, wealth, sex, friendship, love. And I used to sort of I used to show the list to them and I would tell them, okay, now choose something that you want to talk about. It was a small psychology test, and I figured people end up talking what's closest to them, or they end up choosing a topic that's closest to them. And those interviews used to be very in depth, very intimate, conversations I would have with strangers, and those conversations I would then publish them. So I think that was a great training ground for me as a documentary filmmaker, because it definitely helped me get over my inhibitions about approaching, an absolute stranger. I realized that most of the times people want to talk, they want to be heard. And if they don't want to, even that's all right. You just sort of thank them, smile, and then move on. So, yeah, I think that was a great training ground. And I did it all by myself. So that made the journey even sweeter. I didn't sort of rely on someone. So I sort of, now when I look back, I definitely feel that that played a very important role in my journey as a filmmaker. Yeah.
So like there are documentaries in India like about sexual exploitation and something like that. And your film is also about communication, parenting, consent. So like why you choose like that route like about parenting? Because we have films like To Kill a Tiger and something like that, which is something maybe from different point of view, maybe rural area, but you're from urban area. Like, what was the reason like you choose that aspect?
Because I'm from urban India, and I think, and this is, of course, this is my personal opinion. I feel that while a lot of films are coming out of India and they're doing well, I think we are restricting our stories to rural India, and well, all of us live in urban cities. So I sort of, while I really enjoyed watching these films, I think somewhere it it sort of stood out that there are very few stories that talk about urban India and urban Indians. And so it was very clear to me from the word go that I don't want to make stories about rural India, because there are enough filmmakers already who are doing that and who are doing a lovely job at it. Um, and I'm not from rural India, so I would do best, and I would perhaps do more justice to stories that come from urban. And so that it, by the looks of it, that is really going to be my focus uh, in all my films. And yeah, I'm a parent, so I, I think these are subjects that one really starts engaging in when you are a parent, because um, unfortunately, all of us have had a brush with child sexual abuse as children, largely because now that I've made the film and people come and talk to me, I think there are more people who tell me that they've had experiences, unfortunate experiences in their childhood, than people who don't tell me. So um, I just, you of course do not want that to repeat for your children. And, as filmmakers, you're also thinkers, and you also want to sort of see whether how you can make a, how you can make it a little different for your children. So I sort of I started a journey of wondering how I can be different as a parent, how differently I can do things. And I think what's the film about is really an outcome of that.
Was there any script?
No, doesn't seem like there was a script.
No.
Yeah. No, so as a filmmaker, I also don't believe in having scripts for documentaries. I'm somebody who's very intuitive. So even when we went for the shoot, I knew I was going to have this conversation. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what words am I going to use. I didn't know whether I was going to make a film out of this. I was just very clear that I'm going to shoot. And I didn't realize none of what happened on that camping trip could have been scripted, or I could have sort of pre conceived that. So I think what I did as a filmmaker was to just keep an open mind and trust the process. And a lot of times I sort of shoot and then sort of see if there is a story here and then see if I want to develop it. So I just decided, and I didn't even go with the intention of making a film, to be honest. I was actually shooting this for another film. And everything that sort of happened on that trip, I knew it didn't fit in the film that I was shooting for, but it was such beautiful material, nevertheless. And I was like, I mean, I would be stupid not to do something with this. So that's how the journey of What's the Film About started.
Like how big was the crew and how many days like you shoot?
How many days? How many? So I think about two days at the most. 2 days. I think this film was was a very fun film to make because the crew was also a very small crew. There was a sound recordist with me, a cinematographer. That's it. I don't film with assistants. I'm not a big fan of assistants, especially when it comes to very sensitive subjects. I knew that my children would have got intimidated, with more people on board. So I kept a very skeletal crew, and it was like my cinematographer says, it really felt like going on a camping trip. It didn't feel like we were shooting. Um, and so it really was fun. I think from start to finish, the journey has been a fun one. And because I didn't set out to turn this into a film, I even in terms of the budget, it was a very low budget thing. Even when I decided to make a film out of this, I'm an editor, so I knew that because a chunk of your money goes towards editing, chunk of your post production funds goes towards editing. I knew I would save on that. The crew that came on board, all of them, did me a favor. They either uh, gave me charged me very little or charged me nothing. So I didn't sort of take the pressure of making a film. I said, okay, I have this material. I'm just going to put this together and see what comes out of it. So the journey has been very different from how films are typically made, yes.
So what was like the most difficult challenge? Like still, like you're making a film, like it's a sensitive topic, and your children is there, and you are there. Like what was the most difficult part about it?
I think that was the most difficult part, to be a mother and filmmaker at the same time. And to be talking about such a sensitive issue. So to sort of strike a balance between all three was emotionally too much for me, and I hadn't accounted for it. Like I thought, हाँ उसमें क्या आया? I think I'll be able to do it, and of course I did it. But I didn't take into account the emotional toll that I'll have to sort of carry. And but then of course, I mean, I recovered. I took a break of I think close to 2-3 weeks before I started editing, and it took me about 2-3 weeks or maybe even more to understand that okay, there is a film here and I want to pursue this. Um, but the shoot by itself, while it was fun, I think it was fun for everybody. It wasn't fun for me. Let me just put it this way. So while on the outside, I was very calm and I had to take care of my crew. I had to take care of my children. I was also the producer. It's not like I had a producer on board, so I had to take care of the logistics. I was driving. I had a crew and, kids all packed up in the same car. So I was really wearing multiple hats on the shoot, but it did take a toll on me. I don't think visually I showed it. But as days passed by, I definitely sort of put the film aside and I'm like, okay, like I don't want anything to do with it right now, and let time decide whether I want to make a film out of this or
Like for the funding part, like did you apply for grants or like do you put your own money?
not. So I put my own money largely because I think I was very excited with the material that I had on board, and the funding cycle or the funding journey sometimes really interrupts with the energies. All right, because you're going to have 10,000 people telling you, no, but you know, this should be like this and this should be like that. So many grants to write because we documentary filmmakers often rely on grants. Um, and I didn't want anything to interfere with my enthusiasm. I think I was very, very excited. And so I had enough money to start the project. And like I said, my crew was fantastic. Most of them worked on deferred payment. So I wasn't really worrying at that point. I wasn't worried about money. Like, how do I make this film? And I'm an editor. So, of course, it meant that I don't pay myself. I still haven't paid myself, by the way. I am yet to recover my fees from the film. But uh, I did apply for the Vichitra grant, and I applied for distribution after the film because I think by the time I had applied for the grant, I was almost done with post production, and I was very uh, lucky to get the grant. So that sort of helped me take care of everybody's fees and put a website together and very small little things. Uh, and yeah, so that's how I took care of the funding. But largely, I put my money in it. Also, that time I had money. If today somebody asks me to put money or make a film, I won't be able to because currently I'm broke. But at that point, I just finished a project and I had some money that had come from that project. So I was like, hey, I have some money, so let's just do this.
Okay, okay, okay. So
Even the shoot, hang on. So even the production of the first schedule was through a grant. There was some money left from a grant. And I'm, in a way, I'm very idealistic. So I'm like, acha, ye grant ka paisa hai, this has to go towards filmmaking. I'm not going to touch it. So I was like, okay, ye paisa aaya hai. It wasn't too much. It was just 50,000. The 50,000 wasn't even enough to cover the expenses of the shoot. So I still had to put my money in it over and above that. But since the grant money was there, I was like, chalo, thoda shoot kar lete hain. And that's how the film came. But of course, I didn't shoot with the intention of making what's the film about. Yeah.
so as a director, like what you like the most? Editing, shooting, which part?
So I don't. I mean, I direct. I'm a director and editor. Um, it's very difficult. I think I'm essentially, even if you're directing, whether you're directing or whether you're editing, you are telling a story. So, what people don't like, many people might not realize is that there's so much of storytelling involved in editing. If you're a good storyteller, you're a good editor. So, I feel like both the roles are an extension of me, and I would not be able to choose. It's like somebody asked me to choose between a Rehan and Mitra, I'm like, both of them are my children. I won't be able to say which one. So I'll say both are very, very dear to me. What's not dear to me is production. I don't like being a producer. But as independent filmmakers, you often end up producing your own work because in India, there aren't too many documentary producers or too many producers who understand documentary filmmaking. So it becomes And then it's also a little like, dating somebody, finding the right energies, somebody who likes you and you like them. And, the process is a very long one. So, ऐसा होता है कि अच्छा चलो, there is a film, until I don't get, until I, get somebody on board, let me just sort of produce this myself. So that's a role that I'm not, like, I don't enjoy doing it, but I have to do it. But directing and editing are my absolute like babies, and I love both of them.
Like how much time it took like to complete the film?
Um, so October. So we shot in August. So say I think about 4 months of post production, I would say, with breaks in between. So it wasn't. Of course, it's a short film, so it wasn't continuous. And for me, of course, because I was also editing it, and I had to be careful that, you know, um, I had to be careful how I represent and how I show the story because I'm also a character in the film. So the I took, I think I remember taking 2, 3 breaks to just sort of share the rough cuts with mentors and colleagues. And of course, everybody took their own time. I also let them take their own time. But I think 4 months comfortably. Like at no point did I thought, and I didn't want to race through the edit because again I was having fun. Like there was no expectations, or I hadn't like set these deadlines for myself. Um, so I think 4 months, the whole post production. The edit, I think I was done by the first week of December. I had more or less the edit almost finished film with me. Edit locked film. Yeah.
It premiered at IDFA and DIF. So what has been the reaction of audience like? If you compare it in India and internationally.
Um, I think there's been no difference. People have loved the film nevertheless. And I'm actually surprised to say this because the film also screened in BFI London Film Festival, and the response at BFI has been astounding because I couldn't go to BFI, but soon after the screening there were reviews on the film on Letterboxd, which I hadn't expected it. Like because I've not got that kind of response after any of the festivals. But BFI has really, it surprised me. Like there were reviews written by professional film reviewers, and then there were reviews by by cinephiles on Letterboxd. And I think the subject is so universal, and it's you would think that it's something that's, I mean, of course, maybe it is still a taboo here in India, but I think abuse of children is such a universal, unfortunately, such a universal phenomenon that I've had people responding to it very emotionally, irrespective of whether it was here in India or whether it was in Europe. It didn't matter because it just, people have just so much to say about it. People have so much to, and I had people cry. So even when I went to ITFA, someone broke into tears and she was crying to me. And the same happened when I was in Dharamshala. And I think that's when I felt, those are the moments when I felt really, I I don't know, but I wouldn't say glad, but yeah, in a way that I'm glad I pushed myself to make this film. Let me just put it this way, because Um, I hadn't expected the kind of reaction that I did. I had imagined that it could be something like that. So if I look at statistics, if I look at it purely from a very analytical and statistical thing, I'm like, yes, of course, like a film like this should touch people's hearts and should people should be able to connect with it. But when you actually see that happen in person, when you actually see people break down and come to you, um, it also you actually stop being a filmmaker at that point, because then you are, I think, you are just a human and you're just sort of connecting and you're feeling somebody's sorrow because you understand so well what they went through. And and like I remember this gentleman, he was just crying and I couldn't do anything and my kids were with me and I just held him and I just let him cry. And he's like, I wish I had seen this film when I was growing up. And because I feel like somebody should have told me these things. And in my head, I went like, yeah, because that's exactly why I made this film. That if you do not have access to a parent who tells you these things, I hope this film is something that children can turn to in case you do not have people to have conversations with you. At least, and it's not like the film answers all the questions. I mean, by no way the film is comprehensive. By no way you're going to watch the film and know exactly what safe and unsafe touch is, what you need to do. It doesn't. What the film does is lets you know as a child that you don't have to feel guilty, you don't have to feel shame, and talk to somebody immediately. Tell them what happened and don't be scared. Because I think what tends to happen with all of us and continues to happen is that we are so scared and confused that in all those feelings, and it also takes us a lot of time to process that this has happened and that this is wrong. So I think the hope is that time to process comes down, that children understand that you don't have to feel ashamed, you don't have to feel guilty. Tell somebody you trust this is what's happening. And it's a process. I mean, I call the film as a conversation starter, honestly. I made the film with the intention that parents, children, teachers watch the film and then start a conversation of their own. I also didn't want to take the responsibility of doing that for parents because I think it's a journey and it's a process. It's a journey between, and it's a relationship building between parents and children. And for every parent, what to say, how much to say is different. I think in my experience, I tend to give more information to my children than some other parents. And I think it is completely okay. There is no right or wrong about it. This is my way of, bringing up kids, and somebody else might have another way. So, so even when I was making the film, it was very clear to me. I don't want to elaborate the conversations. I want to sort of just start the conversation and stop so that children and parents start having a conversation of their own, and these conversations are ongoing. By no means, uh, you can have one conversation and stop. Like some of the criticism that the film has got is that, yeah, but what is the conclusion of the film? What is the conclusion? What are you trying to say? And I'm like, I'm a parent myself. If I knew, if I knew what if I knew the solution, if I knew this is what you do, then there would be no point of making this film. I'm a new parent. I mean, not new, but I haven't parented before. Even I'm learning. So for me to give a clear-cut answer. This is what you should be doing. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't want to take that responsibility. All that I'm trying to say is that this is the conversation that I had with my kids. This is how it went. This is how I tackled it. Why don't you have a conversation now and see where it goes? And yeah, and most people have got that. And I think some people still ask me, so what's the conclusion? What is it that you want to say in the film? As as like, I think the film for me was about giving agency to children. So for me to sort of put my voice there, I didn't think it was my place, because what I'm trying to say is that kids know more than we give them credit for. And for me, it was very clear from the start that the voices that need to be prominent in the film are those of my children and not me.
So, like as an audience, like I will tell you like how I feel about the film.
Sure, sure.
Like it's obviously about communicating. Like as a
Right.
children, like they're how old were they?
So when we shot the film, my daughter was, she was 8. She was 8 and my son was 11. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are like really young and innocent. Innocence can be shown from a dialogue and all that. Like you can see the innocence, like how funny they are. Like come on.
Mm.
Like the film is so funny, and it the film starts the conversation, and the kids also feel slightly uncomfortable first, but then you start the conversation. The conversation occurs, but it never feels like a exposition, like you are not lecturing them or anything, but you just want a conversation. Like your kid doesn't feel any awkward when you tell when something, like if something happens, like they don't feel like they should be ashamed of or they can't talk to you, like that what I feel the film is about.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
So like there are many filmmakers who say, documentary filmmakers, like they say the foreign audience see the India in certain lens. Like do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the films from India that tend to do well are also films where um, we are in some kind of trouble and we don't know how to get our shit together. Um, like whether be it climate, poverty. I'm not sure if I should be saying these things, but whatever. Um, and these films also tend to do well. Yeah, politics. The fact that we don't have it together, and I think there's a lot of appetite for uh, for this in the West. I think the West likes stories from India because we are exotic to them.
During the
Hmm.
grants, like if you see the films which get grants for especially documentary, like you can see the reason because they are topic specific.
Yeah, not just grants, but
Film
even
festivals.
even for festivals, even when these films need to be acquired. I know what's the film about. It's going to be very difficult for an acquisition to come through because first of all it's a personal film. I mean, let's be real. Personal films are great to watch. So personal films, honestly, I feel people love watching personal documentaries um, because it's just something so intimate and raw. Uh, and people like seeing what happens behind closed doors of a family, because otherwise you don't get such intimate access in what's happening in somebody else's life. So there's a huge appetite for personal documentaries, but it sadly doesn't sort of translate into an acquisition. So that's that. Okay. Number two, uh, what's the film about is not just a personal documentary, but it's also a personal documentary from India, which doesn't fit into the standard template of how the West likes Indian films to be. Because essentially the film is also sort of taking steps to take ownership, or it sort of has an Indian family taking ownership. We are not in need of anything. The film. I mean, it's almost like fine, there is a problem, and as a family, we also sort of suggesting or coming up with a solution uh, to it. So in that sense, it doesn't really fall into the usual the success stories of Indian documentaries. So for sure, I don't have huge expectations. So which is why I think I'm more keen on having a DIY distribution where I take the film to people, where in the form of public screenings, in the form of taking the film to schools, um, doing workshops, collaborating with sex educators and child psychologists and doing workshops with parents and children. And I feel that for me, that seems a more, I think, practical, but also a beautiful way to taking the film to audiences and sort of, doing this. But your film is still going to be exclusive. It's not going to be a film that will reach people. And I think it's very important for because of the subject matter, it's very important for the film to reach people. And so I think though there are problems, I'm not too worried about it because I've also found out ways to deal with these problems. I don't know whether I've succeeded because I'm just about starting with my journey. So I don't know whether I'll succeed, but there is an intention of doing a DIY distribution. Yeah.
So you're a filmmaker, like you may have seen a lot of films which you really like and you want to recommend. Like, can you recommend few films? It's a list, like any films, any filmmakers.
That's a very hard question because a lot of filmmakers I know, I feel that I have so much to learn from, and they make such lovely cinema that it's difficult. But I'm fangirling. So there's a filmmaker that I met at in Amsterdam. In fact, her film was in competition with me. Um, Her name is Pariza. I don't know what her surname is. She's Iranian, and her film really stay. They have something so haunting about it. Um, and I love Pariza, and I don't know if she'll appreciate me saying this. Uh, it's it's very artistic. It's maybe a like too artistic, but in a beautiful way. Like I watched her films, and one of her films has it just had its world premiere in her latest film had its world premiere in ITFA. It's called, hang on. Okay, so her surname is Aminolahi. She's Pariza Aminolahi. Um, Quite sure I'm not pronouncing it the way it should be, but her latest film, I'll tell you what it's called. A Place to Call Home. It's a short film. It's a 10-minute film. Um, I think among all the films that I watched this year, this really stayed with me. And there's another filmmaker by the name of Miranda Stern, and her film Milk it is during the festival run. It came out in 24. We were in the same category. We were competing in VDR in April, and her filmmaking is just so. I think visually it's not raw, but the emotions is just so raw. It sort of stays with you. It haunts you, and she's both of them, both Pariza and Miranda, make personal documentaries, but their the extent to which they reveal themselves is it almost gives you goosebumps because like how far will you go to tell people who you are, to tell people how you feel? And I feel that takes courage, like 10x, like how do you even do that? And for you to sort of, I think only like a true artist can do. And which is why I said, I mean, especially in Parisa's work, I said there's so much of art in it. Like you would wonder that while you would enjoy watching it at a festival or on your laptop, I don't know if gatekeepers and acquisitions would want to acquire it because it's so personal, which is the sad thing. But yeah, these two filmmakers for me right now, I'm really fangirling over them, both of them. And their filmmaking styles have really stayed with me. Like I know, and I hope that one day I get to work with both of them for sure. Yeah.
Great, great, great. So, like, as a documentary filmmaker, like, do you find any difference in documentary filmmaking and fiction filmmaking, or do you think like every film is same, like even short film also?
I mean the question is a easy one, but it's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, of course, they're different. They're as different as they can be. The approach is different, right? With documentary, you can shoot like how I usually do. अच्छा थोड़ा पैसा है 10,000 है चलो जाओ shoot करो. You can't do that in fiction, right? Um, so I definitely feel that documentaries are, for a lack of better word, easier to make, and I don't mean easy. It really depends on how you're wired. Uh, but in they're easier on the pocket. Let me just put it this way: they're not easy to make, but they're easier on the pocket. But with documentary films, you really require a lot of patience. You need to have a relationship. I mean, not just with your participants of the film and your characters, but you also need to have a relationship with your ambience, and you need to sort of really be patient to see where the story is going and follow it through. Fiction is, of course, very different. Everything is very controlled. Um, but at the end of the day, I think a film is a film, and but I know I'm saying that, and I'm very aware of the fact that somebody else is going to give you a different answer because for me, it doesn't matter if it is a short or a feature length film. Uh, I think the material and the subject and what you've shot really decide. So if if you set out to make a feature, but if the material that you've shot at the end of whatever 2 3 years is going to make for a better shot, as a filmmaker, I'm somebody who's just going to listen to the material and say, okay, fine, I'm just going to make a shot out of this. But of course, it takes you a while to get there. You also have to set your ego aside. But for me, I think it comes a little more naturally because I'm also an editor. So for me, footage is king. So it really doesn't matter queen. Why should I say king? For me, footage is everything. So the footage decides the treatment. The footage decides whatever, everything. Um, but you still put in that same passion. You still put in that same effort. I didn't put less effort in what's the film about because it was a short, you know. Uh, but having said that, of course, features is a beast, like maybe I wouldn't like with what's the film about, I could shoot it with my own funds. I could have fun with it. I'm very certain I'm not going to be using these terms when I'm making a feature. So, so that's that. But in terms of the passion and the craft, it's the same. It is really the same. Because at the end of it, you are a storyteller. So I didn't put in less work or less effort because it was a short. I still gave it my best. Because it's something that stays. You like one cannot say actually ये short है, I'm not going to prioritize this over something else. It's still a story that you want to tell. So that. But I also feel in this whole race for making features, and I understand why filmmakers want to make features because if you don't make a feature length film, people don't take you seriously. That's it. Like shorts, of course, is a great way to sort of get your name out there for people to get to know you. But it's still not seen as a respectable format or storytelling. Like, without taking names, I went to Dharamshala and somebody said that, okay, now hope to see you here with with your feature. And I was like, what's wrong with the short? And then it occurred to me that until you made a feature, you're not seen as arrived. And that same sentiment also is seen in film festivals where feature length filmmakers are prioritized over short. Um, uh, Even with sales agents, I mean, most sales agents don't even represent short films because they say I mean, there is no market for short films, which really beats me because attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. People are watching reels. People are even with a feature length film, if you're watching it at home, most of the times, at least in my case, I don't watch it at one. I watch it at one length. Even with a feature length film, I will sort of get up multiple times. I'll watch it across maybe 2 days, right? So why is there this why are short films still looked down upon? So it's sort of bothering me, and I really feel that it's not about whether you make a short or a feature. Story is a story. It's really the story that decides the canvas that it needs to tell the story. So go ahead, figure out what is it that you want to say, and if you want to, sometimes you want to say too much, pack it in this much space. You layer it so beautifully, and it just seems perfect. But I understand why we filmmakers also like run behind features because otherwise nobody takes you seriously, which is sad, but that's the reality.
And maybe because there are these stories like Paul Thomas Anderson made a short film, then he made a feature. Uh, Damien Chazelle also made a short film, but then he made a feature. Maybe that's maybe filmmakers think like first they will make a short film, then they will make a feature.
Yeah, but see, I mean, if short films were respected enough, people wouldn't find the need to make a feature, right? So features still like the bar. You are not seen as arrived if you don't make a feature. And what happens in this whole race of chasing a feature film? What happens is uh, we all actually tend to make films longer than what they're supposed to be, and like and it's very rare that I've found like even a 75 minutes film. It's very rare that I've found myself not getting bored. Most of the times I see a dip. I'm like, ये इतना stretch क्यों किया है? Then I realized, but of course you have to meet that feature film criterion, right? It doesn't Because from the minute you from 75, if you go to a 60, maybe it won't be recognized as a feature. Maybe it'll be recognized as a medium length film. And again, you won't be taken seriously. So it's sad that these rules exist, but they do. Yeah.
Okay. So my last question is, if somebody wants to become a filmmaker, like what advice would you give to him?
Oh, live life. Like, because if you don't live a life, you won't be able to translate that into cinema. So live life. The more dramatic your life is, the better films you'll make. I mean, you also need other things, but essentially, live a life. Don't stop experiencing things. Experience them and don't hold yourself back. That's all that you need. And then the tech. See, it's very easy to get technical know-how. Okay, there enough books, enough labs, fellowships, YouTube. You can get technical knowledge. What uh, s- what you are not going to get is experiences that you cannot, that only you can get, and that you are not going to get by reading a book or by watching more films. You just have to go and live a life, um, and feel that pain and feel that disappointment and feel that joy and happiness. And I think at some level it starts pricking you. Like there's just so much to say. There's just so much of pain. There's just so much of joy. There's just so much of everything that good filmmakers then find a way of pouring all of that into their work. So, which is why filmmakers also tend to be passionate people because they also come with, a lot that's happening in their lives, and then they sort of pour it into their work. So, I would just say that don't stop yourself and just keep living a life and building experiences, good and bad.